Hi, there I am. There's one Sean Chandler, ready to talk with my patrons about whatever you would like to talk about today. Assuming I didn't mess this up. Let's make sure I got. All right, there we go. People joining in already. Cool. I always get worried I mess these things up. Got new software, so I've almost got it figured out to where I don't need to worry about messing everything up. All right, real quick before we get started, I put this down in the description. I put it over on the post over on Patreon. But these live streams are getting popular enough that there's too many people to have everybody just kind of drop questions like crazy right up front. So if you can just kind of slowly trickle out your questions. So ask a question, wait for me to answer other people's, and then ask another question. Don't like put three in a row. If you put three in a row, I'm going to skip your questions. And it's not because won't answer your question. You can ask it later on. It's not that I'm looking to leave any sooner. I'm fine to stay here. It's that when we're getting 10 people in here, 15 people in here, all asking two questions in the first 10 minutes, I don't get to answer everybody's questions until 40 minutes into it. I don't want to do that. So be sure try and just ask one question at a time, trickle it out so that everybody gets a shot. It's really about respecting the other people here. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to be here to answer your questions. I got an hour and a half or whatever. So just so you know, just add one question at a time, and I'll try and move a little bit quicker than I can. Cameraman in. Hey, I finished season 4. This is easily the weakest season for me so far, but season 4 finale is the best episode so far. I have questions about Smallville season 5 before I start it today. I'm game to do my best to answer, but as I keep saying, I watched season 5 when it first aired, and I've watched episodes since then. Maybe I rewatched it like 2009, but it's been over 10 years since I just watched through see any of the seasons just straight through. I think it's been 10 years. I watch episodes that I like and little parts of seasons, but not straight through them. Anton, hey Sean, are you still watching Arrowverse shows after Crisis? I haven't been, no. Flash drops on Netflix Wednesday, and I'll catch up on it, but I'm done with everything else. I'm not planning on watching it. Like, I'll check out Superman and Lois and see if I dig it, because I like Superman a lot, and I'm fine with Tyler Hoechlin as Superman. So we'll see if the show works. But like, I'm not watching Supergirl and stuff like that. There won't be an updated Supergirl ranking. It's possible that I'll have a Flash ranking. That's kind of where I'm at. Rich Reviews, how are you? I'm good. I literally just got out of the shower. So if you guys want specifics, so there's my still wet hair underneath my hat. If you want you guys can see crazy haired Sean. Why not? Actually, it doesn't look too terrible. I have enough hair now that when I do crazy, it still kind of turns out okay, which is kind of fun. One of the fun things about the quarantine is wild quarantine beard and hair. Majestic Demon, hey Sean, good to see you again. Good to see you too. Tony, new background, bro? Nope, not at all. So I haven't used this space in a while. Is basically what's kind of happened. So I cleaned off this desk, and I've been using it at a new laptop. There's some reasons behind I started using it again, but I actually built this last August, and then I used it a good bit, and I intended it for my podcast. And you can see my normal set right there. It's right there behind me. And the red wall that was in my Scoop review, it's right here in front of me. So I'm just sitting at my desk. This is the desk. I built it to have like a workstation. I have a TV right there. But then when quarantine happened, everything got turned upside down and kids were at home. And so I stopped using this space, and the office got trashed out. So I was just storing stuff on this desk. So I haven't used it for 2 months. So I've used it a number of times before. So it's not really new at all. But to a lot of people, it's new because I haven't used it and a lot of people kind of showing up recently. But yeah, the desk gets used more by me than it does for the channel, and some of it's just that this whole room is designed to shoot over in that corner. You can see the lights are hanging from the ceiling. Even right now, I'm using my little ring light. This is just like the circle light that puts the looks on my eyes, the circles on my eyes. I just have a little ring right here in front of me right now. But the room is designed for that corner, and so it's just tricky. I don't have a desk in front of me if I shoot at the red corner. So anyway, that's kind of the backdrop and all that. Zeke, how are you? I'm doing good. Before I dive into this, I'll kind of restate this. Be sure slowly roll out your questions. as is already. I've got like 20 questions here. And so just don't ask too many questions in a row. Like, I'm not going anywhere. It's not about me. So I'll answer your questions if you got a real question you want to ask me. But it's about respecting other people so everyone can get their question answered. Because if you're here in the first 2 minutes and drop 10 questions, then someone else joins in 5 minutes in. They don't get their question answered till 50 minutes in. And I just want to be respectful of everybody. Rich reviews. I always thought that Amazon would kill off retail. It looks like the virus is going to finish the job. Kind of true. Sorry about that. Yeah, it's not a great time for retail, but I don't know, especially now, like I don't think I've been in a store. I've been in a CVS. That's it. I've been in a CVS in the last 2 months, and I went in one or maybe 2 times. Maybe I've been in Walgreens 1 time, and that's it. And I've been able to go in Best Buy, and I just miss browsing. Like, I think there is something absolutely lost when you're just kind of on Amazon. And the way I like to go Blu-ray hunting is going to Best Buy and looking for deals and stuff like that. It's just a lot more fun to find something for $5 and take it home that day than it is to like, oh, look, I found a deal on Amazon and it'll be here in 2 days. That little drip in your brain, the dopamine drip of finding something and that little payoff. David Patterson, I just rewatched Iron Man 2. Not good. Yeah, I mean, I can't disagree with you. I always have it as bottom 1 or 2 on my rankings of MCU films. I think that it's like the cast is fine, the magic's still there, all the action and everything, but they didn't have a good enough script. Adarsh, what do you think of Roland Emmerich as a director? So the guy that I do my podcast with, Griffin, hates Roland Emmerich. Like, he's his least favorite director. Like, he doesn't like any of his movies. He thinks they're all garbage. I'm from the generation that grew up on his movies. So like, I saw Stargate in the theater. I didn't see Universal Soldier in the theater when it came out. I saw Universal Soldier in the theater actually 8 years ago when Expendables 2 came out. They did a Van Damme marathon at the Alamo Drafthouse, and I went to go see that. It was like, it was Bloodsport, Lionheart, Universal Soldier, then Expendables 2, all in a row. It was really cool. Like, they literally had a heart eating contest between the movies at one point in time. But so anyway, he directed Universal Soldier, but I saw Stargate, and then Independence Day was just this insanely big hit that everybody loved. The Patriot, loved The Patriot, and so I'm just kind of that generation that really digs a lot of the stuff he did. He got stuck in the same rut. Independence Day 2 was 15 years too late, maybe 20 years too late, but I think he did have a contribution that I think was very important to films. And like every blockbuster now just has these big, gigantic explosion third acts where the whole world is blown to pieces. How many movies did that before Independence Day? Like, Independence Day kind of started a lot of this stuff. Even the Skybeam that we joke about all the time about comic movies, he started a lot of this stuff. Okay, ma'am, did you see my did you see how to fix Crisis on Infinite Earth's first 3 parts can be fixed? I sent it to you after live stream last week, and I'm going to be working on parts 4 and 5 sometime this week. I'm sorry, no, I haven't. I haven't gone through my direct messages on Patreon. I'm very sorry about that. That's on me. I told you to send that to me, and I didn't read that. So I haven't, I still have the message saved because I still intend to. I tried to respond one of the problems. Full honesty on kind of one of my struggles with Patreon is that because you actually guys are joining me on a membership site, I want to write a good response. And if you send me something, I want to read it. And so sometimes I can fall behind on stuff because of perfectionism, and I want to be able to put the time into it. But then life happens or whatever. And so without wanting to say too much, like to elaborate on what the reason why, I had a whole bunch of really big kind of stuff kind of going on in my personal life this last week. All good stuff. But there's kind of a big shift in some things and some stuff my wife and I had to figure out what to do with. And so I just really distracted me a little bit. So I need to catch up probably tonight, and I'll take a look at that. Rich reviews. How many drive-ins are in Texas, and are any of them open? I mean, I have no clue how many drive-ins are in Texas. I think he asked that last week. I have no clue. I don't even know where I would look that up. There's a portable drive-in here in Austin. And here in Hutto, actually, not even Austin, a Hutto right here where I'm at, 10 minutes from my house, but it's just in a park. And we went there to see The Force Awakens a couple weeks back. I tweeted about it, posted some pictures from it, in different places, but, Majestic Even, thoughts on a possible Atlantis, the Lost Empire live action in the works? So I'm pretty sure you've been listening to the podcast, and we've talked about it many times on there. Both Griffin and I think that Atlantis is kind of a prime example of a movie that benefits from a live action adaptation. I saw it for the first time last fall, and my immediate thought was like, this is a movie that would be good live action. Like you give this one $200 million budget. It's got some Stargate. It's got some Avatar. You can see the spectacle, big war. I mean, royalty. It's got everything that you kind of want from a big family blockbuster adventure, but it doesn't have the name recognition of a Lion King. So it's not a safe bet. So I think as for what's a project that I think they could actually do something with that benefits from it. But get Andrew Stanton to do it. He did John Carter and a ton of Pixar. Get him to do Atlantis, and he just do something amazing with it. But it's not a safe bet, though. Comics Man, hey Sean, I watched American Psycho for the first time. I liked it, but it didn't fall in love with it as I wanted. It's a weird one. It's not a direct kind of, not a normal. It's an acquired taste. That's the way to put it. It's an acquired taste. It does interesting stuff, so you can respect it. But I can also see easily why you watch it and be like, I'm not sure if this is for me. Oh, whoops. Richard Views, the only episode of the old Lois and Clark show that I remember is the villain that only had a head. I don't even know if I've seen that one. I've seen almost the entire show, but I didn't watch all the way through season 4. I don't think, even though I own it on DVD. It's just it's one of those shows that kind of petered out on its energy as it went along. And half the fun of the show is the tension of won't they get together? And once they got together, the show kind of lost a little bit. Andrew Mills, hey Sean, would you ever watch some British shows such as Line of Duty or Bodyguard? I mean, it's not a matter of it's entirely possible. Like, I'm not specifically avoiding them. It's much more of I just don't have much more room for more shows in my schedule, just in general. Between the shows that are kind of like I watch them because I started watching them years ago, or I watch them because they tie into my channel and they're comic booky, Star Warsy stuff like that. Stuff my wife wants to watch, stuff we watch with my kids. All the movies I have to watch. And when you put all that together, there's just not a lot of extra time for kind of exploring. And so that, even like I haven't watched Game of Thrones. People are always like, I need to watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So even of these like big iconic American shows, there's a bunch of them that I haven't watched. So I'm open to it. It's all just a matter of I only have so much time. David Pattison, I didn't like Scoob. I didn't really like it either. If you saw my review, I did not enjoy the direction that they decided to take things. Oh, did I lose my place? I did. I lost my place on here. Oh. Thoughts on JCPenney filing for bankruptcy? Just to throw a little reminder in here, be sure everyone to space out your questions. I'm trying to don't ask a bunch of questions in a row. Like we're 13 minutes into this and I'm 8 minutes behind on when questions were asked. And so just try and be very conscious. There's a lot of other people in here and a lot of people just kind of showing up. So ask your questions, slowly trickle them out. I'm going to be here an hour and a half. So if you just spam me with questions, I'm going to stop. I'm going to have to start skipping over people to get to the people that haven't asked a question yet. I don't have any thoughts on JCPenney filing for bankruptcy. I mean, that's the world we're in right now, that if the government stops all businesses or many businesses from being open, companies still have expenses, they have debt, they have to pay rent. And so then you get yourself in trouble in that situation. So I don't have any specific thoughts. It's just like, oh, that's the consequence of everything kind of going on right now. Jackson, hey, Sean, I was wondering if you've ever seen Cellular with Chris Evans and your thoughts on it. If you have. I haven't. I know what movie you're talking about, but it's one that I've never seen, unfortunately. Majestic Demon, I don't mean to be nosy. What was big enough thing that happened to cause you to break diet the other day? I mean, I don't want to talk about it. That's why I didn't say specifically. If anyone that knows me in real life asks, I'm fine to say it, but it's not something that I'm looking to. That's specifically why I was very vague about it. It's a good thing. It's a very cool thing, but it's nothing that I would mention on my channel, though. It's that sort of thing of there's just not a Not something that my wife wants me putting that much of our life out in the world, but it's very much a positive, and nothing that, if people that know me in real life that have asked me, I've answered, told them what it was, but I'm not looking to share that with the internet. Gamerman, according to my Twitter poll, Smallville season 5 is the best of the Bad Bunch. Is that true? If you can remember, the Bad Bunch being 4 through 7, it's very possible. I think 6 and 7 are the worst of those. 4 and 5 kind of blend together. I mean, I guess they go off to college in 5, and if you like kind of the direction they go with bringing in Spike from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, then that's a positive. There were some episodes in there that I really didn't like. Like I'd probably lean towards season 4 over 5. If I recall correctly, just because they brought Lois in, so there's some dynamics that were interesting about that. But 6 and 7, I'm pretty sure the worst. 6 has some of my favorite episodes of this window of time, because that's when they brought Green Arrow in. But the actual arc of the season, I just thought was terrible. David Patterson, once again, I'm gonna. If you ask me another question, Suzette, I'm going to skip it over, and you can re-ask it again. I'll answer it. It's not about not answering your question. It's just I need to answer everybody's. I'm rewatching all the MCU films just so I can review all of them on Letterboxd. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Landon, semi-scoop spoiler. Well, then I'll be. I'm not quite sure what that is referring to. Jonas Diaz, do you plan on reviewing HBO Max when it comes out later this month, like Cartoon Network, Crunchyroll content being added, downloads, profiles, want to compare, Netflix, Disney Plus? It's on the table. Like I'm almost certainly going to check it out, and we'll see what happens. Like I'm going to check it out. I don't know if I'll ever review it. I haven't reviewed Netflix or Disney Plus. I've done videos like, hey, what to watch on. I might do that with HBO Max as when it first drops, and kind of dive into some content when people are first checking it out. But I just don't really know. I'd have to know. It's a little bit soon to know too much about that. Tony, rewatching Glee currently on season 3. Have you ever watched it? I watched season 1, was like all in, and then I gave up almost immediately on season 2. It was like there's enough of a break there, and then season 2 started, and I thought that it would immediately just jump the shark. They did the John Stamos Britney Spears episode where everyone has group hallucinations. They do the episode where about losing your faith that was pretty offensive. They were trying to tackle faith, but they did it in a entirely way intended to step on toes. Like they present any religious person as an idiot. There's this whole thing about a grilled cheeses, and this guy, you get 3 wishes because he found Jesus on his toast. And I was like, I'm not doing this. All right, Majestic Demon, you have a question? I would answer. You're just asking too many too quickly. I got to get to other people. I'm fine to answer the question. You're just asking too many. Carlin, Lyles Nixon. Hey, Sean, who will be the next big bad for the Marvel Universe replacing Thanos? Do you have 3 villains who come to your mind? I mean, I really don't have a guess as to who I think it would be, simply because there's I don't really have a guess, no. I think especially because X-Men and Fantastic Four are just down the line a little bit, it's tough to know what they're planning on doing. And you could view Phase 4 as the equivalent of Phase 1, where it's rebuilding. There's not a big bad in there. So we don't really figure out who the big bad is until the end of Phase 4, beginning of Phase 5, something like that. I think, you think Galactus, doing Galactus right, bring the Fantastic Four in. You make it a little bit more personal. Maybe you make it Magneto, and it's kind of an X-Men plotline type thing that's on Earth. It's not doing the whole universe. It's like what's happening here on Earth with the turmoil and mutants. So those are the 2 that would come to mind, is with the things we know that could be interesting. Red Sox teacher. Hey, Sean, I enjoyed the Die Hard ranking. Do you think there's another great John McClane story, or does the awful 5th movie mean it's done? So here's what I pitched over on Twitter when I rewatched them. I was rewatching them and I had this thought. John McClane is like one of the most famous New York City cops in all of cinematic history. And we've never really seen him function as a New York City cop. He's more of a battling terrorists in Die Hard with a Vengeance. So he's in New York. He's working with the police, but he's not acting as a cop. And then you have the other 4 movies where he's not even in New York City. And so I think the place where there's room for another Die Hard is that it's not another Die Hard, it's a John McClane movie. I think that's where there's room for it. And you make it actual like a detective story. And it's not designed to, you make the budget $30 million, $40 million. Like it's smaller in size. It's not big spectacle. And it's much more of a character piece about the day-to-day life. I think that's what you could do. And, to say the cliche answer, you get James Mangold to direct it. And suddenly I think you have something that's interesting that adds to the franchise without just trying to like outdo everything you did before. Samuel Pride, ever thought of doing a video about the most rewatchable movies? Maybe. I've kind of thought about it, but I need to have a video. I mean, yes, is the short answer to it. The short answer to it is yes, I have done that. All right, we got Rich Reviews has a question. Jonas has a question. Cosmetic, David Patterson, Majestic Demon, Gamerman. Okay, I'll answer these real quick, but I'm got to give quick answers just because you're asking too many questions, like all right in a row. And like I've already answered questions, and I don't mean to be difficult, but there's just a lot of people in here, and so when I'm seeing the same names every 30 seconds. It's real quick. Rich Reviews, will we be watching the Disney live staging on Hamilton? Yes, I plan to. Jonah, I think I already answered that one. Comics Man, what are your thoughts on True Grit? Really great Western. I really enjoyed it. It's not one that I like go back and rewatch, but it's something I've really enjoyed. David Patterson, I watched Zodiac last weekend. Absolutely loved it. What did you think about it? I've actually never seen Zodiac. That's one that I've never seen. Jesse, I noticed your chair that you guys were watching Frozen 2. Amazed that you haven't gone crazy after seeing that film. First one so many times. Literally, they're downstairs watching Frozen 2. They just watched Frozen 1. I mean, every day we watch Frozen 2. That's just kind of part of having kids is you rewatch certain things a whole lot. Gamerman, Smallville spoilers. You told me certain characters are drawn out so far where but I'm aware Jonathan Kent dies in season 5. Does his death affect the show any? Also, I don't know how he dies, so don't tell me. I mean, I think you basically what you starts happening in season 5 is that transition from Smallville to Metropolis. That they're trying to close off his time in Smallville and move him to adulthood. So he graduates high school, he loses father, and so he's on his own. And so, I mean, it definitely changes the dynamic because it's moving him away from what he was before. Zeke, what was your favorite subject in high school? I don't know that I would say I had one. I didn't really, there's nothing really hops out. Like I had a physics class that was really good for me as a person in developing, but I wouldn't say it was like, oh, I loved physics. That's not the way I would describe it. Skipping over a Rich Reviews question because you asked too many questions too quick. I just answered one of yours. If Tenet makes its July release date, would you go to the theater to see it given the circumstances? Absolutely, I'll be there. No question. I'm not in a hot spot area. I'm not really nervous about some of this stuff. I mean, I think if you take reasonable precautions and the world has to start back up. So absolutely, I will go see Tenet. I mean, I looked to, there's one theater in Austin that was open. I looked to see if they're playing Scoob, and they weren't, but I probably would have gone to see Scoob there. Dear Press, I just answered one of yours. Jackson, what is your favorite Seth Rogen movie? Mine is This Is the End. I don't know. I'm not a big Seth Rogen guy. His whole shtick is kind of this, hey, drugs, I'm looking at porn, and that's not the thing that immediately appeals to me. The one last year he did with Charlize Theron dialed a lot of that back, and so that one I enjoyed that one a good bit. I don't immediately think of it as like my favorite Seth Rogen movie, but it would come to mind as one that was like, I really dug that. Jonas, what TV shows and movies have you and your family been watching, loving during quarantine? And we watched Lego Masters together, the one about people building Lego stuff as a competition reality show. This week, I've been watching through the John Wick movies for something I'm doing called 31 on 31. On May 31st, I'm going to rank 31 action movies, Jason Bourne movies, John Wick, Lethal Weapon, Die Hard, Bad Boys, Mission Impossible. One more that I'm blanking on what the other one is, but 31 movies. So I'm watching through a bunch of action movies for that purpose. Watching through a bunch of old martial arts movies because I'm doing fitness stuff. So I like to watch action movies. So I like watching the kickboxer movies while doing that. Matt G, did you take drama classes in high school or film classes? We didn't have film classes. I took one drama class. I did take one. Andrew, what's up, Sean? First time joining the live stream. Awesome. Love the content. What happened to David Fincher? Would you ever rank his films? He has a movie coming out this year, and theoretically coming out this year. I mean, it's scheduled for later this year. And I plan to rank his movies when that comes out, whether it's this fall or next year. But yeah, I mean, his last movie was 4 years ago, but then he did, I think, 2 seasons of Mindhunter or something like that on Netflix. So he did some TV, and then this year he comes back with a movie. So, so he's got something coming out. That's the short answer to it is he's making his return, and yes, I will do it. Just a Demon, you're asking a bunch of questions. I got to skip you over. Sorry, man. And once we get to the bottom, you guys can start putting questions in again. But like right now, it says that I'm 10 minutes behind on questions. Did you get a 600? Oh, I just answered one of your questions. David Patterson. I saw Joker earlier. New Mutants to release August 28th. Yeah. It's actually a terrible weekend. That's infamously one of the worst weekends of the year for the box office. And obviously it's its 5th release date. Okay. I looks like I'm caught up. So you guys can ask like the questions I skipped over. You can ask them again. But the key thing is ask a question, wait 5 minutes and ask another question. If you ask a question and 2 minutes later, ask another one, it's just too crammed. So just pay attention to what other people are asking. Game Man, did you see Rob Liefeld had to say about Deadpool and the MCU? What are your thoughts? I mean, we talked about that on the podcast this week. You had a whole kind of conversation about his comments on it. I don't think anything of it really because he's not involved. He's a guy that makes money from if they make movies. So he's frustrated they're not making movies. Fox was cranking them out every 2 years. 2 years have passed and they don't have one greenlit yet. But there's an acquisition. Of course, they didn't greenlight another one. They were being acquired by Disney. So, I mean, he's just frustrated for reasons like that. So I don't think too much anything of it. Adarsh, if Edward Norton never left his Hulk role, do you think we would have had any effect on the MCU's trajectory or success? I've always liked his take on the character. It's really tough to say, to know what factors into what, but I mean, Norton was very involved in the script writing of The Incredible Hulk, in which case you have an actor that I think was much more wanting to be the creative side, not just the performance side. And so I think absolutely would have changed the trajectory a bit in some sense. It wouldn't have been a one-to-one, just a different actor in the same stuff because he has opinions. He would chime in on stuff and that would have an impact. Zeke, thoughts on Disney Plus developing a Ahsoka Tano show? It's earlier to tell, but I'm optimistic if they get a good team to work on the show. I would need some more details and trailer to get excited. I mean, exactly. Just in theory, does a Ahsoka Tano show sound interesting to me? Yeah, because it's a character that we've seen in animated form. Thus far, we haven't seen live action yet, and we know she's out there. In which case you want to see what comes of her. You want to see kind of the follow-up. And because she's a former Jedi that left frustrated with them, burned by them, that's all interesting. And so I think that's all the reasons that I think that there's a lot of potential for it to work and not just feel like and she's not the A-list from the blockbusters. And I think that's the stuff when they keep going back to those characters I get frustrated with. But when they take these types of characters, I think that there's room to explore them in a way and bring them to a new audience. So I enjoy those ones more. Matt G, I'm pretty on the fence about this new Batman. Why? Matt Reeves is an incredible director that is a great fit to do Batman. So I don't see a reason to be on the fence. Samuel, favorite Robert Downey Jr. work out of the MCU? I don't know. I haven't seen some of his Oscar stuff that he's done and some of his dramas. I haven't seen Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. All the things that would like people point to as like this is his best stuff outside the MCU. That's all the stuff I haven't seen. So I've seen like U.S. Marshals and some of the other dramedies he did in the early '90s and Doolittle. But all the things that I need to see are the ones I haven't seen. So unfortunately, I don't have a um, good answer. Rich reviews. So I heard that they're quietly filming in Australia another Children of the Corn remake. Yeah, that sounds about right. That's what they do. Thoughts on Timothy Oliphant being cast in The Mandalorian? I'm pumped about it. I am absolutely. I love that. I love Timothy Oliphant. And so him joining the Mandalorian is only a plus. And even the way that they're casting that show and the way they have casted it, it's like they pick out these actors that get me excited. You know, like getting Carl Weathers and Gina Carano. Those are people that aren't like A-listers that to the broad masses would draw them in. But for me, that's like, wow, they got them, and then they get Timothy Oliphant. All that stuff is very cool to me. Matt G asked a question 1 minute after another one. You got to space them out. David Patterson, and I'll answer just, you got to ask it later on. David Patterson, I have a system for keeping up with the majority of the movies I watch being movie I've never seen. For every rewatch, I have to watch 2 new movies. Not a bad idea to kind of expand your what you've seen. I know for me, the big thing that just helps me see new stuff is just the simple fact that I have to do these rankings because the way I do the rankings, it forces me to watch different things and explore things. And there's limitations to it, but in a lot of ways that it does help. Andrew Arton, it appears by the end credit scene of The Incredible Hulk that the original intention was to have the Avengers versus the Hulk. I mean, some of that's in the if you see the one of the influences for the Avengers movies as we know them was kind of called the Ultimates, and that's one of the plot points is that Hulk turns bad and they have to fight him. But even inside the Avengers, there's a little bit of that because you have Hulk being driven mad by Loki, and so he's freaking out on their Harrier ship while they're being attacked. And then in the second one, again, he freaks out. So they always clearly they wanted to do that and experiment with that idea a little bit. So it's always kind of been in there as something that they do. Gamerman, in the later seasons of Smallville, does the picture format get better because the earlier seasons, or at least on Hulu, picture format is dated, making it kind of hard to watch? Yeah, I mean, they transitioned to widescreen. I mean, like up until 15 years ago, people had square TVs. They had, with the boxes. And so then slowly people started getting widescreen TVs. And that's when they started transitioning television. And that happened with Smallville throughout the run of their show. And a bunch of shows are like that, where they, likewise, nobody had an HD TV when Smallville came out. That wasn't a thing. And so then TV shows weren't really high definition at first. And so a lot of that stuff they had to back convert it and make adjustments. Comics, man, favorite Batman comic book, Batman Year One. Mine is probably The Long Halloween. Yeah, I mean, I love origin stories. So the Batman Year One, Long Halloween, and Dark Victory are kind of like give you 3 graphic novels that walk you through the 3 earlier. And so he's fighting mobsters, and then the crazy starts to show up, and you see the origin of Robin. And so then those 3 I just love as like a little arc to kind of set you up with the character. Landon Peterson, who's an actor that has dropped off in the past few years? Well, I mean, over the last couple of years, like Jennifer Lawrence seems to have put in the brakes on her career. She was in everything for a little while, and then she's been in nothing for a little while. I don't know, it's tough to say because they literally don't come to mind because they haven't made anything. So kind of by definition, they're a little bit tricky to remember for that reason. I don't. I'm not having one immediately come to mind. Sorry. I wish I had a better answer for you. Red Sox teacher. Rewatched The Long Kiss Goodnight. I think it's underrated 90s action movie. Might be my favorite. Samuel L. Jackson. Have you seen it? Yeah, actually, I think it's an exclusive on Patreon. Is my review for it. I believe if you go to my movie reviews on that little tab for exclusive posts, I think I have a review of it on the channel, on specifically Patreon for you guys. So I think I got a just like 6 minute review or whatever for it. I've never been a big fan. I've never really liked it all that much. And it's a like when where it gets weird is that like people ask me, "Hey, would you ever make a movie? Do you ever have any ideas for movies?" I do. One of the ideas I have for a movie is kind of very similar to the plot of The Long Kiss Goodnight, the similar kind of memory loss, former assassin stuff. But just the tone of it, the nature of it, the way they did her character arc, I just didn't really like what they did with it. And so then it's one I've never really fully connected with. Oops. I don't know. What am I doing? Rich reviews. So when is a Netflix Adam Sandler film not a Netflix Adam Sandler film? You give it to David Spade. So when is a Netflix? Oh, no, I'm not entirely sure what you mean on that one. Other than, I mean, it's a Happy Madison film, so I guess it mean that one that he turned down. Artish, I saw in your last collection video you have a Person of Interest. What do you think of the show? I loved Person of Interest. I just loved that show. If you guys don't know, it's a TV show from Jonathan Nolan, Christopher Nolan's brother, and this guy named Harold Finch basically makes this machine that taps into all phone lines, computers, and can predict what's likely about to happen, predict crimes in the future that are about to take place. And the week-to-week plot line of it is that the guy Harold Finch only has access to basically, like, he's just given a number that lets him know a person. He doesn't know if they're the victim or the perpetrator. And so he recruits Jim Caviezel to be, who's his ex-special forces guy, to help him stop crimes from taking place. So that's the week-to-week setup, but like it dives into like why does he not have access to his machine anymore, competing machines, the government overreach. It dives into all this other stuff. So it has this real deep, rich mythology while having this kind of week-to-week action plot line, child appearing in the background. So I really dug it. Andrew Artane, Kiss Kick Bang is fantastic. You feel shades of The Nice Guys mixed with a bit of a murder mystery, a bit of comedy. Feels right up your alley. And that's what I hear from everybody, but it's just one I haven't been able to check out yet. One of those solid Shane Black ones that everyone that's seen it seems to love it. Majestic Demon, movies I picked up this month are Cinderella, double feature of Birds of Prey and Suicide Squad, Far From Home, and Frozen. Are fans still sending you Blu-rays? I mean, I haven't checked my mailbox. I really, actually, I guess come to think of it, I really need to go check that. Because they'll send stuff back if I don't check it. But because I just don't leave my house very often for the obvious reasons. I haven't checked my mailbox, so I'm not really sure. I mean, people are always sending me stuff in the mail. It was just like a real distinct window of time. Like I hadn't had people that just send me direct packages from Amazon before, and then I had like 5 people do that all in 2 weeks. So maybe that'll happen again. But yeah, I really don't know because I haven't checked. David Patterson, what are your top 5 actors? Mine are Hugh Jackman, Leonardo DiCaprio, Christian Bale, Jake Gyllenhaal, and Harrison Ford. I mean, I really don't have a list like that. I don't keep that sort of thing offhand. So whatever I'm about to say, I'm about to essentially make up on the spot, whatever names they are. But I always say Sylvester Stallone because my wife told me I needed to start saying that. Arnold Schwarzenegger, Harrison Ford. Yeah. So those are 3 easy ones to say, I guess. From there, I don't know. I just don't really like picking favorites on a lot of things like this, where there's people have such big bodies of work that are so diverse, so different, and some of it's bad and some of it's good. And I haven't seen all of it. It's that those are three that I know I love a bunch of stuff that they've done. Zeke, celebrity you'd like to meet? I don't like when it comes to meeting a celebrity. If I got to actually sit down with them and have like a real conversation about stuff, that's what I'd want to be able to do. Like, pick their brain and things like that. Just kind of the wait in a line and be like, hey, Harrison Ford, I love your movies. Let's take a selfie. That having a selfie with him is pretty cool, but there's nothing about that type of interaction that's appealing to me. Even kind of with what I get to do some interviews and things like that. And there's very different types of interviews, like the press junket interviews. The one where I got to interview the guy that was the Terminator in the latest movie. Oh, that's not right. Like I was in the room for 5 minutes total. It was like I walked in and they said, hey, if you want to take a picture with him, that comes out of your 5 minutes. Oh yeah, absolutely. Took a selfie with him. And then they had to like check their mics and like, okay, you have 3.5 minutes to ask your question. And then I asked him like, hey, what are your five favorite action movies? And he answered 2. And they're like, all right, your time's up. And I was like, okay, thank you for time. Shook his hand. And then he kept answering like he kept answering because he was interested in my question, but these other people in the room were kicking me out. So like that, I'm not, there's things about that are good for my career and they're cool opportunities. But speaking of like, who would I want to sit down with? I'd be more kind of directors and writers are a little bit more interesting to me. So like Spielberg, Christopher Nolan, and even like David Goyer, who's been a part of a bunch of these comic book movies. Zack Snyder, I think, would have a very interesting perspective. Just looking for those people that I think could, how they think about stories and things like that, and maybe have interesting tales to tell about the making of them. Hence why like Zack Snyder is something of a person would be very interesting to have a real conversation with, not like a guarded one at a press junket. Gamerman, you said a couple weeks ago you wanted Tom Welling to be Superman on Supergirl, but that wouldn't make sense since Smallville already had a Supergirl. No, but I mean, it's not. I don't want it to be a continuation of Smallville. That's not what I'm saying. What Supergirl and these Arrowverse shows have always done is stunt casting. Like, Dean Cain. I mean, on Supergirl's parents that raised her are Dean Cain, who played Superman on Lois and Clark, and Helen Slater, who played Supergirl in the movie Supergirl. So, I mean, they've always done this stunt casting, and Terry Hatcher showed up. So when I say I want Tom Welling to play Superman, it's a different continuity. I'm not at all saying I want the two continuities to be the same. Like, he is playing their version because in it, Superman is supposed to have arrived 12 years earlier, so he's 12 years older than her. That's what Tom Welling is to the actress that they cast, Melissa, as opposed to Tyler, who is younger. I believe he's a year younger than Melissa, in which case it's goofy. Like they explicitly told us that he's 12 years older, and then they cast a younger actor, which is an odd thing to do. Movie Lover 999, favorite Disney movie. If you're talking about their animated stuff, then it's Lion King is my favorite animated movie. That's what I always say. Andrew Mills, what are you watching right now, TV and or films? I answered this just a few minutes back. I'm watching through a whole bunch of action movies in anticipation for this video I'm doing, 31 on 31 on May 31st with 31 action movies. I'm going to rank from 7 different franchises: Lethal Weapon, Die Hard, Bad Boys, John Wick, Mission Impossible, Jason Bourne. Yeah, so, and one more that I'm blanking on. I think there's one more in there. So that's what I'm watching through, and then I've been watching about Best of the Best 1 and 2, Kickboxer, a bunch of stuff like that while I've been working out. Rich Reviews, thoughts on Lionsgate doing a Hunger Games prequel. Personally, while I'd be interested, I don't know if I would see it opening weekend. I'm not a big Hunger Games person. I was never really into the books or the movies. I liked the second movie a good bit, but the other ones didn't fully click with me. the way that they were. Even my wife loved them and got all into the books, and all of my former students got into them like crazy. But you know, I need to know a little bit more details exactly what it was. I don't hate the idea because there's clearly a lot of story that can be told there. There's a big backstory that could explain this world that we're seeing. And that's when a prequel makes sense. More so when it's about how did we get here? Like what led to this? That's a story worth telling. Whereas it's just, Han Solo, where'd he get his dice? I don't think I need you to tell me that story. Jackson, thoughts on season 4 of Community? I'm only halfway through it. I've never seen the full thing. I think it's a huge drop in quality, but season 5 is just as funny as it's ever been. So I've never seen up to season 5. I'm on like episode 7 of season 4. I'm watching through it right now. I thought season 3, they started to lose their way a good bit. And then season 4 is a continuation of that. I think they just went too dark and too wrapped up in like, how weird can we make all of this and tie this stuff together and have these big themes and someone's been kidnapped for months. That's a lot of mythology for the show that they're doing and just doubling down on the weirdness. And season 4 seemed like they tried to dial some of that back, but amp up the human emotion. And I think it isn't, it's got a weird vibe to it. You can tell that like Dan Harmon was gone. Landon Peterson watching Breaking Bad for the first time. Very cool. Very cool. Andrew Arrington, do you have a favorite book series? What are you reading right now? I picked up Ahsoka Tano on audiobook, a bit of a YA, but it fills the gaps between Clone Wars and Rebels. Favorite book series? I'm not really big into fiction. I've never been a big fiction person when it comes to books because it just takes so long to get through a story. So like I went through, I listened to Jurassic Park a few years back and I thought it was phenomenal, but mostly I'm interested in nonfiction. I love Malcolm Gladwell, his stuff. If you're running exactly right now what I'm listening to, it is just how interesting I am. It's I guess there's not a way to do that. I can't do that. You can't see that too well. It's Chris Hogan's Retire Inspired. So it's Dave Ramsey's guy that does retirement stuff. I'm listening to his book on retirement. So that's how interesting I am. I just finished Star Wars Rise of Skywalker, the audiobook. So I try and go back and forth between a bunch of I try and listen to like business marketing type books and then some like amp you up. I call it self-help books. It just kind of get me like, man, I can change the world. I'm going to go crazy. And then I'll do an audio book, and then I'll do a book on like something about filmmaking, and then I'll do something about on handling money right. So I try and cycle through a bunch of different stuff. Majestic Demon, if Tenet ends up being another Nolan classic, do you think he'll be on the same level as a director like James Cameron? I'm not quite sure the contrast you're making there. Christopher Nolan is on the same level as James Cameron. James Cameron would be way up here if he still made movies, but he doesn't really make movies anymore. He's made one movie in 20 years. But actually, stop and think about this. Just stop and think about this. Let this sink into your brain. Since Christopher Nolan started his career with The Following in 1998 or 1999, James Cameron has put out one movie. James Cameron has put out one movie in Christopher Nolan's entire film career. That's crazy. I mean, you think about how many just like iconic classic movies. So if you just use the 21st century as your example, Nolan is way over James Cameron because James Cameron had a massive hit, but he only did one movie. So I'm not quite sure the distinction you're putting there. James Cameron has dramatically hurt his career for me by not putting out movies. Because if you looked at what he did from 1984 until Titanic, there's like 6-7 movies, all of them interesting, very cool stuff in 13 years. And then in the last 23 years, he's only put out one movie. So James Cameron, he stopped being a filmmaker. He doesn't make films. You can't say you're a filmmaker if you don't make films. He hasn't made a film in over a decade. I get he's making stuff right now, but we don't have it yet. Maybe it'll get delayed again. Movie Lover 999, thoughts on a live action Hercules? I'm not familiar enough with the original one. I've seen it 1 or 2 times. Not one that I love, not one that I grew up watching. So I really don't have a lot of thoughts on it besides kind of my generic, like, why do we keep remaking some of these ones? Shouldn't they space this out a little bit more? I wish they'd do something original. Yeah. Red Sox teachers, since we are both Spielberg fans, which genre would you like to see him do next? I would like to see him revisit the horror genre since he made Jaws. It's a little bit tough to say because I think his age is catching up with him, and I think some of the magic isn't quite there like it used to be. And so that he's trying to be the director that he was when he's not that guy anymore. And so like Ready Player One should be a lot better than it was, but he's trying to make a movie like he used to make, and I don't think it works. And I imagine that's somewhat what happened with Indiana Jones, where he's like, let's do it. Man, I'm going to go back to that thing. And he's just not that guy anymore. I don't think so. That's tough to say because even like traditionally, I've always said I wanted him to do a Star Wars movie. I don't know if I want him. I don't know that I want 74-year-old Steven Spielberg to do a Star Wars movie. And that's the sad thing. I don't really know what his sweet spot is anymore. And, you know, he's done a lot of these movies and they normally get some critical praise and Oscar buzz and stuff. A lot of them do, but then they're forgotten. They're not movies that actually make a big dent. They're just, he's Spielberg, so we got to celebrate him. But, you know, he's not the legend like he was before. So actually, I don't know that I have an answer. If you got to go back and you could say like going back 15, 20 years while he was still kind of in that prime, I would have loved to have seen him do any of the Star Wars prequels. I would have loved to have seen him do that. Return to horror and kind of doing really, really doing some of that stuff I think would be pretty cool. Trying to think, what has he not done that would be pretty cool that I actually want specifically to see him do? I'm not really sure. So those are my general thoughts. Tums, I know it's been a while since the Morbius trailer, even longer until it actually comes out, but when are your predictions for the Sony Marvel universe? What are your predictions for the Sony Marvel universe? I'm not using their new name. I'm predicting that they're legitimately going to try and have their own pocket universe where it's interwoven just like the MCU is. And I think for that reason, the MCU is going to try and, as much so as possible, be like, yeah, we've got a movie. Yeah, Spider-Man's in here. And they won't acknowledge that stuff. But even when they announce their upcoming dates, a lot of times Spider-Man's not in there, even though Spider-Man is coming out. And so I think there's kind of a weird relationship there. But yeah, I mean, I think that's Vulture that we saw at the end of that trailer. And they're using that to set up Sinister Six type stuff. I think we're going to see Tom Holland in these movies. I think it is entirely going to be its own little pocket universe over here that the MCU over there ignores. I think more and more Spider-Man will become, I would guess Spider-Man will be less and less important to the MCU as a whole. Like technically he's there, but not all that involved. Addersh, have you seen Tron Legacy? Is it any good? That's a tough one. People that like it love it. People that like the Tron movies love them. The Tron Legacy in particular has fantastic visuals. When it's the de-aging, there's a lot of Jeff Bridges de-aging. That's not great, but all the other stuff is very cool stuff because it's artistic. It's beautiful, but it's also like you're in a video game. So super cool visually. And then a perfect score from Daft Punk that's synth that fits perfectly with the design of everything. But I just don't know that the plot is as strong as the visuals, unfortunately. And so that's where it's one that I'm not super into, even though I think some of it is great. But other people really dig it. Comics Man, I saw The Invisible Man a couple days ago. I think it's my favorite movie of 2020 so far. What's yours? I have a ranking of all the movies I saw before quarantine, and I'm pretty sure Invisible Man was number 1 on there. But I have a video that kind of does all of that from about a month ago. Gamerman, Tom Welling said somewhere, I can't remember if he had to suit up for Crisis. He wouldn't have agreed to do it. I saw in an old interview with Christopher Reeve that he was Superman. Tom Welling's character is the story of Clark Kent becoming Superman, not Superman himself. I guess that makes sense. I mean, he's got to do whatever he's got to do. And it's a really weird thing to do. It seems like he's done a bunch of interviews on Michael Rosenbaum's podcast where each of them have kind of elaborated of why they don't really want to be a guest star on someone else's show, and they understand the appeal to people, but like to them, it's not really all that appealing. But it's just, I think it's an odd thing to not deliver that. It's just, when you think about what the fans would absolutely love to see, a proper version of Tom Welling as Superman. That's the payoff of 10 years of Clark Kent. And so the fact that they're just so adamant about, no, we don't want to see him in the suit. No, we don't want to do that. That's just bizarre to me. I don't think it makes any sense, other than maybe for his personal reasons. But it's weird to me that he seems so adamant about not doing that. I don't really understand the logic to it. David Patterson, which Scorsese movie should I watch next? I don't know, because I don't know which ones you've seen. I don't. Mean Streets. Check out Mean Streets. But I don't know what you've seen. So, and I'm not a Scorsese expert at all, and I don't present myself that way at all. And I've mentioned before some of the ones you've watched, and been like, oh, I've never seen that, and that still remains true. So I'm not the best person to ask about that. Rich Reviews, thoughts on both The Purge and Treadstone TV series being canceled on the USA Network. So I didn't see any of The Purge, and I didn't hear anyone that seemed to have positive thoughts about The Purge TV show. So that one, okay, sure. Treadstone, I actually watched the first 3-4 episodes and found kind of interesting. And since I just rewatched the Bourne movies, I've been thinking about checking it out. Rewatching through it now that I just watched all the movies, and then right as I was about to do that, I found out it was canceled. But I don't think they promoted it well. It just seemed like it came out of nowhere. They're kind of weird about how they promote stuff. But the few people I know that have watched Treadstone really dug it. I enjoyed it enough, but so I think they should have done more to kind of promote it. Landon Peterson, thanks, Sean. See you next week. Bye-bye. Majestic Demon, I definitely agree. I want to see more fairy tale stories from Disney. All of these live action remakes, with a few exceptions, are beginning to bore me. Yeah, I mean, they're not inspired. They're not movies that are being driven by creators. They're being driven by stockholders. They know that they'll be hits, and so they're trying to make hits. And that's frustrating to me, that when Disney is being so non-imaginative with their company known for its imagination. Andrew Arting, I'm ashamed of it. I've never seen the Godfather trilogy. The runtime feels like a huge investment. Is it worth it? Does it live up to the hype? I mean, 1 and 2, of course, are classics that if you're a film fan, you have to watch 1 and 2. You just have to. Obviously, a ton of people think they're 2 of the greatest movies ever made. Many people call Godfather 2 the greatest sequel of all time. I've never seen the third one. And I'm not someone that always rewatches the Godfather movies. There's a reason I don't talk about them on my channel. There's a reason that I haven't ranked them, because I haven't seen the third one. But they're also for the same reason of I get that this is great content and classic. That doesn't change the fact that it's a big investment, and that kind of definitely can push me off from watching like a nearly 50-year-old 3-hour movie. That's an investment right there. But if you're a film fan, of course you have to watch 1 and 2. Zeke, I personally haven't been the biggest fan of MCU Spider-Man. I kind of hope he just goes back to Sony, because even their movies weren't very good. They at least stuck to the comic book character. Yeah, it's tough to know how much of that is Kevin Feige being distinctly being we don't want to be like the other ones. We want to have our own distinct Spider-Man. How much of that is just the guy that they hired? How much of maybe it was Sony being okay, we just did 2 with the same version of Spider-Man with just a slightly different tone. Don't know, but yeah, I mean, I very much want Spider-Man to get back to being Spider-Man, having his own tone. Zeke, I just don't like how they're straying away from the comic book classic Spider. Yeah. And I mean, like when it's in the first one, they go to, I mean, he shows up in Civil War and goes to Europe. His own movie, he goes to Washington, D.C. Infinity War, he goes to space. His next movie, he goes back to Europe. I mean, they're very intentionally not doing classic stuff, and they're intentionally being true to the personality of the character, and they're trying to bring these new versions, or new characters and villains in. But yeah, I mean, I think you're missing a bunch. I think they're missing a bunch of things. Carlin, will we see Adam Warlock in the MC? I mean, all signs point to it. I mean, they obviously teased him in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. And then, you know, the plans for that probably to pay off in Guardians 3, but that got delayed. And so I would think absolutely. Gamerman, do you watch Stephen Amell's podcast? No, I haven't watched any of the stuff he's done. I wasn't even aware that he actually had a proper podcast. I've seen him doing stuff on his Instagram that was long form, but I didn't know that was a actual podcast in the true podcast sense. Tony, are you going to check out the final season of 13 Reasons Why and the new Judd Apatow movie? I've never seen an episode of 13 Reasons Why. I for personal reasons, I have no intention to ever watching it. It seems like kind of an offensive premise to me. Like I've dealt with teenage suicide before and been to the home of people after their son killed himself the day after. I've been to a high school as a crisis counselor the day after a girl killed herself. And so the idea of making a TV show that runs for multiple seasons is pretty gross to me. I have people try to explain to me why it's not exploitive. None of them have really convinced me how it's not exploitive, though. And they haven't had a good answer for my objections to the show. New Judd Apatow movie, I'm not sure. I don't really know if I'll check it out. I don't like Pete Davidson. Movie Lover 999, favorite comic book movie. I have a ranking of my top 10 favorite comic book movies on my channel. That'll give you the answer to it. I don't mean to play coy, but I mean I don't want to spoil what's at the top of the list. So you can go check that out. My top 10 favorite superhero movies of all time. Rich Views, thoughts on the possibility that The Matrix 4 could restart filming in July? I mean, I won't have any specific thoughts on any of that. Things have to start back up. And no matter when you start back up, it's going to feel too soon or dangerous, or it's going to feel too late. Like, what are we doing? It'll never feel perfect. So the idea that they're going to start filming in July, cool. Cool. Carlin, thoughts on a live action Thundercats movie? Did you watch the 80s cartoon as a kid? Yeah, I watched the cartoon as a kid. I haven't watched it in 30 years or anything like that, so I don't have any strong knowledge of it. I mean, I think there's kind of potential for to make something out of it. The problem is that these kind of kaiju big robot movies and stuff like that haven't. I was trying to remember which one. Actually, that was Voltron. So I was blanking that one on. Thundercats. I just haven't watched it recent enough to have a proper take. Yeah, I was going off on Voltron for a little. Both Voltron and Thundercats. I watched both of them and had toys for them, but both of them I haven't watched in 30 years. So I don't have a good take on whether that's a good or a bad idea. Gamerman, Supergirl may not be a very good show, but since you have seen season 3, what are your thoughts on Midvale as the Smallville inspired episode of that season, one of the better ones? I mean, I don't remember. I watched it over a year ago, or watched it a year and a half ago, or something like that. It's been a long time. It's not something that I watched recent enough to comment on a specific episode. I mean, the Arrowverse shows. I've seen over 100 episodes of Flash, over 150 episodes of Arrow, about 80 episodes of Supergirl. So a specific episode of one of those shows, especially the show that I'm not as invested in, probably wouldn't. I wouldn't be able to comment too specifically on it, unfortunately. Andrew Arrington, Fred Willard, favorite film he was in. Probably This Is Spinal Tap. His stuff with the Christopher Guest mockumentary films. I think that stuff is all really funny. This Is Spinal Tap being kind of the was it Rob Reiner also directed that one. That just pretty amazing stuff. So that's the one that always come to mind for me. David Preston, I just rented a copy of Mean Streets. I hope it's good. I mean, it's old. It's old, so pacing's gonna be different, but it's kind of like Scorsese first really figuring out his thing. But just even, I'm ashamed to admit that I haven't seen a number of Nolan movies. I'll probably watch the following after this live stream. I mean, if you haven't watched many Nolan films, I would say following for last. I mean, it's literally black and white. It was shot for like $10,000. So, of Nolan films, the following is easily the least accessible. So I wouldn't send you to that one next. I mean, Memento is fantastic, interesting film told backwards. Every scene is backwards and it's intercut with a forward moving. That one's great to check out. I mean, I don't remember which ones you haven't seen. Inception is phenomenal. A lot of people love The Prestige. I've never been as big on it as other people, but I would not send you the way of the following. Tony, did you see the new season of Dead to Me on Netflix or the new Hulu show from some of the Rick and North guys? No, I think I watched all of the first season of Dead to Me with my wife. I watched a lot of it. I know she watched all of it. I know she's excited to watch season 2, but we haven't yet. And I haven't watched the new show on Hulu. Andrew Arrington, have you seen the new Voltron reboot on Netflix? Nope, not one episode. It's pretty good and a quick watch if you're still bored during quarantine. I'm never bored. I don't. That's one of my problems. I'm absolutely never bored. I always have just too many things I'm interested in doing. Too many things I want to create. Boredom isn't something that I haven't resonated with people saying they're bored. I have no clue the last time I was bored. Other than waiting in a waiting room or something like that. But even then I have my phone and so I'm writing things. But yeah, I don't like I'm literally never bored. And one of the problems I run into is that because of what I do, I have so many people recommending things and so many things I want to check out that I just always have an enormous backlog too of things I need to watch, or both things I need to watch, want to watch, and I want to watch for people. But really, I have a big audience from India, and they always ask me about Bollywood stuff, and I just haven't watched any of it. They're all so long, and I don't like hey, check this one out. It's 3 hours long. 3-hour investment in something that's an experiment for me. So it always kind of scares me off a little bit. But anyway, that's a bit of a rabbit trail. But short answer to your question of I have not checked out the new Voltron. TV shows are always tricky because they're always an investment. They're never check out the Outer Banks. Even my brother was, hey, check out the Outer Banks, but it's all a time thing. Comics Man, do you think Flash should continue after season 7? See you next week. Bye-bye. Yeah, I haven't seen the end of season 6 yet, so I don't really know what kind of stride they're on. I don't think they haven't had the big dips like Arrow had, where Arrow just got fully off course entirely for so much of their run. But I don't think they have the energy they used to have. What I keep talking about, one of the reasons that Arrow ended when it did, I think is a lot of it is just Stephen Amell not wanting to do he pretty clearly was getting burned out on 22 episode seasons while having a family in LA and shooting in Vancouver. And when he started on Arrow, he was like, I think 31. He's 6 months older than me. So whenever they're filming the first one, he was like 31 years old. I don't think Grant's even 31 now. So Grant is younger, doesn't have kids. Stephen Amell got the Arrow gig, got married, had a kid within 2 years of the show starting. And that's just a big burden. So I think Grant, just because he's younger, has a lot more of a runway for the show to maybe do more like Tom Welling that was 10 seasons. But I don't know. I think that Arrowverse has just stretched itself too thin, both in the 22 episode season runs as well as the number of shows that they're doing. And so they're just burning through too many plot lines too quickly. And I think that's their problem that they have. I think all of them would be better if they did 12 episode seasons and just made it nice and tight, not the filler episodes. That it makes it so they only shoot their show for 6 months, and then you can do the crossovers in the other 6 months. There's just a bunch of stuff that they could do. They could map the seasons out better, and then you're just not burning through plot lines so quickly. And that's the problem that I think that they've largely run into. Gamerman, if I was promoting COIE, I would have only announced Black Lightning. Crisis on Infinite 90s Flash and Brandon Routh as Superman, the non-cameos, but the non-cameos and not announce Oliver's death, Smallville's presence, or any cameos see you coming. Yeah. I mean, I think that's even so much how they shot themselves in the foot, and they promoted it and wrote it entirely on the gimmick. And so they'd already given the gimmick away before you watched it. So it's like, hey, look, Brandon Routh's going to be Superman again. Hey, look, Tom Welling. And so, oh, cool. Wow, that's neat. Oh, Kevin Conroy's actually going to be, oh, this is amazing. And so, but then you see it and you're like, okay, it doesn't really live up to the hype of that. Whereas when Ezra Miller showed up as Flash, that was an actual surprise. And so it felt like it paid off because they didn't promote it based off of that. And you set expectations when you show me like, hey, look, Tom Welling's in here. Tom Welling's in. Oh, that's the whole scene. Okay, well I've already seen that, so that's kind of disappointing. I mean, I think they did everything wrong. I think they just shot themselves in the foot with how they did that whole thing. Just really dropped the ball. If you guys want to throw your last batch of questions in here, I'm going to close out in about 8 minutes, I think. Yeah, about 8 minutes. Gamerman, I guess it made sense for Lana to be in season 4 since it was Clark's last year in high school, but I'm done with her now because she brought in Jason Teague, who is only there for her, and Lois is here. And I don't find her annoying. She made season 4 less boring, watchable. See you next week. Yeah, you pretty much at this point in time go like, okay, why is Lana still in the show? And she's still around for 2-3 more seasons. That's where the show kind of just dragged out a lot of that stuff. Like, you're like, why are you still here? Because we have Lois. You've played out these storylines. And so then they just have to strain more and more credibility with what they're trying to do. And it kind of ruins a lot of stuff. Majestic Demon, I've seen the Dark Knight trilogy, and I think they're all fantastic. And Inception was kind of slow-paced for me, but still fantastic. Rich Reviews, thoughts on AMC acquiring the rights to the Anne Rice literary catalog. Therefore, I guess AMC is doing the Vampire Chronicle series. I don't have any thoughts on that because I haven't read any of those books. They have a pretty good track record with TV. So in that regard, I wish them all the best, but I'm not the target audience. I've seen an Interview with a Vampire, but that was a long time ago. It's, not something that really interests me. So I'm just not the target audience. Jackson, are you a Jim Carrey fan? I mean, I'm the Jim Carrey generation. Ace Ventura came out when I was in the 6th grade, and then he had a 10-year run there of just nonstop massive hits, comedy hits. And so I'm from that generation. So in that regard, absolutely, I'm a Jim Carrey fan. He's scaled back a lot of what he's trying to do, and I don't think he's fully figured out his career once he kind of moved past his comedic prime, for the most part. I mean, he shows up in Sonic, and he did a great job, and you can see how he's perfect to play Dr. Robotnik in that. But, there's only so many of that role. And so I think he's struggling a little bit to find exactly what that is. And he's done some dramatic work that went really well and some that I think let him down. And I think he's a little bit lost in that. But, I'm from literally, we went to go see every Jim Carrey movie, and they were all classics for a few years there. Where are we at? David Pettison, The Godfather Part 1 was one of the best movies of all time. Part 2 was one of the best movies of all time. Part 3, the third one. That's what I hear. Andrew, most anticipated Keanu Reeves sequel, Bill and Ted, The Matrix, or John Wick? I really don't know. I think the safest bet of the 3 is John Wick, because you just know what you're going to get. It'll be great stunt work. They're simple enough with their plot lines, and so It'll deliver on what you want from it. Bill and Ted is a long delayed comedy. Who knows? I don't know if you saw this. I interviewed the guy that's composing the movie a month or two ago, 6 weeks ago. I interviewed him and asked him about it. He said it's great. And it's from the director of Galaxy Quest, which is a fantastic comedy. So he said it's all firing on all cylinders. So that's a good sign. Matrix, the Wachowskis haven't done anything good in a long time. Nothing that I've really connected with. So it's a bizarre one. Who knows? So I don't really know. It's a tough one. Have a great week. Bye-bye. That's to Andrew Arlington said that. Have a great week. So I guess you leave. Bye-bye. Majestic Demon. Hope you have a good rest of your day, Sean. See you next week. Gamerman. See you next week, Sean. I'll chill out with the Arrowverse questions. If it helps you, any blind waves reactions makes the episodes less frustrating for me. I'm not entirely sure what that means. I guess that's a YouTube channel and they do reaction videos to them. Movie lover, thoughts on Percy Jackson series? I haven't read any of the books or seen any of the movies, so I have no opinions on Percy Jackson. David Patterson, rank every movie. Take a while. Jackson, have you seen Midnight in Paris? One of the best feel-good movies out there. Let me check. I believe so. Yeah, I have seen that. Yeah, my wife put it on not knowing what it was. Literally, I don't know, about a year ago, just put it on and we're like, what is this? And then we ended up watching the whole thing. And we literally had no context for what the movie was. And so it's a bit of a weird one to watch without context or knowing the premise or anything like that. But we did. And we'll close out with lol. Didn't mean to put the second question mark. All right. See you guys next week. Thank you guys for the questions and talking movies with me. And moving forward, is we can try and do it. We took a little bit on this one to kind of get the groove of it, but like ask a question and then wait 5 minutes to ask your next question. I gotta have time in there because if that first several minutes I get 30 questions in 5 minutes, then I don't get them answered for a long time. So just if we can work on making sure we get that pacing, it would be greatly appreciated because I don't mind being here for an hour and a half, but it really does bother me when people they show up and they're like, wait, it's all these same guys asking their questions. They've already asked 20 questions and then they don't get their answer question until 15 minutes into it. That's what I don't want. I want it to be able to have a nice cadence to it. Whenever you join in, your question will get answered in a reasonable amount of time, not a 30-minute wait. And to make that happen, we just need to space the questions out. Bye-bye.